My name is Bree, and I'd like to welcome you to my channel, Breezy Banter, a place where I talk about the things I want to talk about. In today's video, I'm really excited because it's going to be the first type of video of this sort that I'm doing on my channel, which is a sort of financial/budget check-in for Q2. And the reason that I'm so excited for this is because I really enjoy watching financial content on YouTube. And I'm not talking about like the Bitcoin bros or the NFT guys who I think are just going about it all wrong and probably immorally as well. But some of the content that I watch focuses on sort of a general population or advice that can be given to the general population. And what that means is that it's not very specific. It can be helpful from a starting point. So for example, if someone says don't spend more than 30% of your salary on living expenses, that can be useful if you're somewhat average in terms of your income or salary. But that advice means something different if you make $20,000 a year versus $200,000 a year versus $2 million a year. And so even though I do still consume that type of content, I find my preference tends to be in individuals speaking about their specific numbers. And that's because some of the most illuminating conversations that I've had in this space have come from friends or family when they've talked to me about very specific numbers. One of my coworkers told me exactly how much she was spending on her mortgage, what the purchase price of her house was, what the interest rate was. That's really useful information to me. Hearing someone say I spend 60% of my salary on rental expenses, but they make $20,000 a year, like having that additional context just makes those numbers mean something different. And so what I hope to do is to be upfront about my financial situation as well. I don't frankly understand the stigma surrounding discussing money. I wish people were way more upfront about it than they are. I think we all stand to benefit when we do so in terms of salary negotiations, in terms of how much you're willing to pay for certain things. If you find out like, oh, your neighbor's paying $400 more in rent, maybe you'll realize like the apartment that you're renting might actually be a better value than you think, or vice versa. Maybe you're overpaying for things as well. So that's really what I'm here to discuss. I plan on doing other videos in this vein going forward. I really want to do a video on allocating how I allocate my paycheck, because I think the system that I have is pretty good, if I do say so myself, and I think it just might be useful to viewers. But for this video in particular, I'm going to be talking about my spending in the months of April, May, and June of 2024. So let's get into it. So I'm going to try to have the spreadsheet that I use to track all of this as a picture in this video. So I'm going to move off to the side. So to start with, for all 3 months, I paid $1,085.81 in rent. So I'm very fortunate because this rent is quite low. I live downtown in a major city. So you might think, okay, do you live in like a shoebox or what? My place is not big by any stretch of the imagination. I believe it's 400 square feet, but it's new, like it's upgraded. And I'm basically the only person to have ever lived there because it was renovated. I moved in September 2015. I believe it was renovated in like April or May of 2015. And so there was one individual that lived there for 4 months, and then he moved in with his girlfriend. I ended up taking over that lease. So he was the only person that had lived in the apartment since it had been renovated before I moved in. So I moved in September 2015. The rent at the time was $950. And in Ontario, way that rent increases work is, my understanding, don't quote me on all of this, do all your own research, but I believe if you've lived in a place that has been continuously lived in prior to sometime in 2018, then there are strict percentages that rent can increase by. Whereas I have rent control is what it comes down to. Whereas if I had moved into this place in, say, 2020, then they could increase my rent like $500 each year, and I wouldn't be able to do anything about it. It would be legal. But I have rent control. So my rent has only gone up about $135 in the past 9 years at this point, which I'm very fortunate for. And I think that does play into some of the numbers that we'll talk about. And like I said, I live downtown. Because of that, I don't have to have a car. So I save a lot of money because of the rent control and because I don't have a car. Of course, that's a choice. There are many people who do live downtown who choose to have a car. But I suspect I've saved hundreds of thousands of dollars by not having a car and by living in this rent-controlled apartment as a result of it. And I love my place. I live in like a residential area, but I'm close to all sorts of sites, coffee shops, restaurants, things to do, grocery stores, parks, etc. It is a downtown area, so there can be like crime, but it's a very safe city. So in general, I'm very fortunate. So I just wanted to say that to provide some additional context behind these numbers. In terms of hydro, or what I think some other provinces call like an electric bill, I spent $57, I'm going to round up to the nearest dollar, that will just be easiest. I spent $58 in April, $55 in May, and $63 in June. I find that my hydro bill tends to be quite consistent, regardless of whether or not I like really use my air conditioner or anything else. So I guess that's probably a good thing. It can range, I've seen it range between maybe $35 and $90 is very high, but I think I have seen it go that high. But I would say on average it's between maybe $45 to $70 per month. For internet, I have great internet. I'm a tech savvy. I spend $91 on that. Laundry, I occasionally have to pay for laundry, not always. I only spent $2.50, like $2.50 in April. I didn't have to spend anything in May or June. For my phone, I spent $59 in April and May, and then $64 in June. One of the credits that I had when I first got this phone, I believe it was only good for like 9 months or something. It must have been a $5 credit plus tax. So that one went away in June. So that's why the price increased, but it should be $64 for at least a couple more months. In terms of groceries, April's quite interesting. I only spent $150. In May, I spent $266, and then in June, I spent $528. I suspect if I recall correctly, what I think happened in April was my parents had visited me, and that meant that I had gone out with them several days in a row for dinner, and so they just ended up paying for that. So that in turn lowered my grocery bill in a way that isn't really typical, or might happen like twice a year. In April, I spent $14 at cafes. In May, I spent $75, but this is because I reloaded my Starbucks card, which I have set for $75. So I didn't really spend that money, but it's currently on my Starbucks card. And then in June, I spent $25, and that's because this was again for that Starbucks card. And that's because there was like a purchase a gift card for $25 and you'll get an additional $25 or something like that. I'm pretty sure it was like a 2-for-1 deal. So I just ended up doing that. I paid $25 but got $50 worth of Starbucks on my card. Seemed to make sense to me. And I'll just very quickly note that I go to Starbucks probably about once a week. It's been far less than that quite recently, but it's not uncommon for me to go to Starbucks, but it's also not the most. I'm not there every day, for example. And I do very much like supporting local cafes. I have like a whole spreadsheet of all of the ones that I want to check out that I haven't yet. So Starbucks is just there's a lot of them across the city. If I really want coffee, it's really easy for me to just find one, and I know that I'm going to get something that I like. But by and large, I really enjoy exploring other coffee shops in my area. For restaurants, I spent $85 in April, $102 in May, and then $18 in June. That's just normal eating out. For transportation, I spent $0 in April, $44 in May, $10 in June. The $44 includes Ubers, I'm pretty sure. I must have taken probably a trip to and from the airport, if I'm not mistaken. And then in June, the $10 is because I added funds to my bus pass, which I don't take the bus that often. Again, I live downtown. Almost everything's within walking distance of me. but I do have to take the bus to go to my doctor. So I upped my bus card. For entertainment, I spent $7 in April, $32 in May, and none in June. And under the entertainment category, I'm including things like eating out at the movies, popcorn that I might get at the movies, and any video games I might buy. I'm sure there are a few other things that might come up from time to time, but those are the main things that will make up this category. So I know that the April one was a game that I had purchased. It was the lowest price that it had ever been. So I decided to buy it. And then May, I saw 2 movies and got popcorn both times. So that's where that money is coming from. Or that's where that item is coming from. For clothing, I didn't buy anything in April. $67 in May, $75 in June. These were both purchases from Old Navy. I think this averaged out over 3 months is probably fairly typical, I would say. I don't enjoy buying a lot of clothing, but I don't think this is like an exorbitant amount or anything. On makeup, I spent $36.50 in April. Didn't buy anything in May, nothing in June. For perfume, I spent $136 in April. Nothing in May, nothing in June. Gifts, I didn't have to buy any in April, May, or June. I spent $561 for flights in April, nothing in May, and then $665 for flights in June. I will say that I get some compensation for this. These were both flights to visit my partner, and so I can't remember exactly how much he'd paid me because he'd sent it to me in USD, like American dollars, but the full price of this is not actually borne by myself. And then for shipping, this is $65. I spent $65 in April, $73 in May, $70 in June. And the reason that I have this green is because I ship, as you might tell by one of these items, I really enjoy perfume. And so it's the indie perfume community is very active. And so if there are scents that I don't like, I can list it on my D-stash, people might purchase them, and then I ship them. But that means like this shows up on my credit card, but I've been reimbursed for this via PayPal. So it's included here as a line item, but it's being reimbursed basically. For medical expenses, I spent $52 in April, $177 in May, and $53 in June. Again, these are green because these have been reimbursed by my insurance company. For rental insurance, I spent $15 each month. For education, nothing in April. I had to pay my tuition in May, which is $2,400, and I spent $5 in June, and this was for like a case study that I had to purchase. These are in red because although they will be reimbursed to me, they have not yet been reimbursed, and that's because at my company, I basically just have to submit proof that I've passed the course before they'll reimburse me. My course like just ended, so I know what my grade is, but I'm waiting to get my grade like officially posted, and then once I do that, I submit the paperwork, then they reimburse me. So that's just, I paid it, it shows up, but it will be reimbursed, it just hasn't yet. Licensing, I spent nothing for April, May, June. This is in reference to my professional engineering license, which you have to pay on an annual basis. And again, this is something that my work reimburses me for, but I have to pay and submit the paperwork before I get that reimbursement. And then other, I spent nothing in April, $2 in May, and nothing in June. I try to keep what I include in the other category at a minimized, because I really want to know where all of my money is going towards. And so I can't remember what the $180 or what the $2 is off the top of my head. But my goal is to have that category be zero, because if I see like a cost recurring, then I want to make it into its own column. This means that for April, May, and June of 2024, my total spent, which includes everything, including rent, internet, groceries, restaurants, tuition, etc. So including things that I might still be reimbursed for, I spent $24,020 in April, $4,542 in May, and then $2,770 in June. So my net income for those months were $7,775. So once you take into account the reimbursements that have already been made, that means that in April, I had a surplus of $6,071. In May, I had a surplus of $3,405, and in June, I had a surplus of $5,006. So that basically means that after all of my expenses are accounted for, again, including things that I will be reimbursed for, that's the money that I have left over to decide what I want to do in terms of investing, basically. I will mention that I get a pay increase in July of each year, and I get a bonus paid out in April as well, so I haven't quite got to that yet. At the time of this filming, what I had set up was for $1,250 from each paycheck to be automatically invested. And like I said, I plan on making a video to talk about what I'm investing in, kind of what my goals are, what my timelines are, etc. But the point here is that each paycheck automatically, I don't have to think about it, I have $1,250 coming off. I've recently increased that to $2,000 per paycheck, just because I found that I had like a lot of money left over each month. And in addition, I have finished topping up my FHSA, my TFSA, and my RRSP for this year. And I won't explain what those are in this video. I'll talk about that in the video where I talk about how I allocate my paycheck. But all of that to say, after that transfer takes place, I also took into account the approximately $6,770 bonus that I got in April, which, let me say, taxes on bonuses, I don't know if it's, well, I suspect it is because of the tax bracket that I'm being taxed at, but that's like less than half the value of what my bonus was. So that's a bit frustrating, but it's fine. I'm happy to pay my taxes. This means that on net in April, I had a surplus of $12,841. In May, I had a surplus of $3,410. And in June, I had a surplus of $5,006. So the difference here between the numbers that I mentioned earlier and this number is that it includes my bonus. And so those are, I think, pretty healthy numbers. You can see I don't think my spending is like crazy or anything. I don't think it's like nothing. I could certainly spend less on coffee. I could certainly spend less at restaurants. I don't need to buy clothes. I try not to buy things that I won't use. I don't like clutter. So it's really easy for me to like talk myself out of things for the most part. But I think you can see that I think I have pretty reasonable expenses and that I'm trying to have a very high savings rate at this point in my life. Again, in the video that I plan on making where I talk about how I allocate my paycheck, I want to talk about my goals, but there are things that I'm saving for at this point in time. So in this quarter, in Q2, that means in summary, I had a surplus of $21,256, and that's after the automatic $1,250 per paycheck that was automatically invested, which I think is pretty healthy. I mentioned in one of the videos that I already made about my goals for the year, I wanted to have a goal of automatically investing $1,250 per paycheck. So I'm doing that, and I've, as I mentioned, since increased it to $2,000 per paycheck. And I want to have like an overarching goal of saving $75,000 this year. But I'm really excited for that. I think I'm on track to hit it. I suspect I'll hit it perhaps October, maybe November, depending. I do have a few things coming up that I think will be larger expenses for me, which means like I'm not going to be able to save $21,000 every quarter. Each month when I get my credit card, I go through line item by line item to make sure like the matches are, or the line items are what they should be, and then I add it into this tracker. And this way I can just take a very close look at what I'm spending. If there's like a category that seems to be kind of out of whack, if I need to readjust. I don't have a budget, quote unquote, where it's not like I must spend $400 or less on groceries. I just try to do the best that I can with what I have. I have a healthy salary, so I think I'm able to do that. And I don't have to worry about like nickel and diming myself. But I also tend to just be naturally more frugal as well. So with all of that being said, I hope you found this video interesting. If there are ways that you think I could improve this video to discuss my finances, please let me know, because I am so interested in creating this content and I want it to be content that people enjoy watching. And let me know if like doing it quarterly makes sense, if you would prefer a monthly video. I could go into some of these purchases in more depth if I did do it on a monthly basis, but I also just don't create that many videos, so I don't know like if it would skew my channel in a way that I don't necessarily want. But I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, I hope you'll like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. If you want to do more than that, I'll have a few links in the description that you can use to do so. Before you go, I'd love to hear from you. How do you track your finances if you do? And if you don't, what would it take to make you start? Before I go, I'd like to take a second to thank you for taking time out of your day to watch this video. It really means a lot to me. Thanks. Bye.